Let's start off video number 3 with a question I have not seen yet out of all my questions. We're just going to jump right into it after telling YouTube to go fuck himself. So it starts with Forsaken King 90. I don't know if he named that shit after the Destiny game came out. But in any event, after some congratulations on the new family members, he has a couple questions. What is your take on what happened to Native Americans as far as the founding of America? Also, what is your take on code talkers? And last part, have you ever been to a powwow? And he says that he's part of the Lakota Sioux Nation. No, I haven't been to a powwow. As far as what's happened to Native Americans, let's be honest, they have been the most screwed over group in the history of this country. It does not matter race, ethnicity, background, country of origin. I know African Americans will be like, hey, motherfucker, do you not know what happened to us? Yes, and I still think Native Americans were screwed over more than African Americans, because just look at the history of what happened to them. Native Americans were on this land perfectly peaceful. Obviously, they're warring between each other, but all of a sudden, Europeans come over. They didn't really welcome them, but they sort of said, okay, we could kind of share this land simply because you have guns and you can fucking kill us. And what did the Europeans do? They brought over disease, which pretty much wiped out a lot of the populations of Native Americans. When the Europeans wanted more land, what did they do? They fought with Native Americans to make sure that they got the land that they wanted and kept pushing Native Americans further out. Over the course of the next 200 years, what ended up happening was European settlers came over even in more droves after the American Revolutionary War, pushed the Native Americans further out into the Midwest and the mountainous areas. They watched as an American Revolution occurred between one set of Europeans and England. And these motherfuckers are like, wait a second, why are you guys fighting a war on the land that we've lived in for over hundreds of years? And we're supposed to be happy that you started a new nation after you kicked us out of our land? Then on top of that, after slavery was already resolved, after the Civil War was already taking place, and the South had to free all of their slaves, what did the U.S. government do? They persecuted Native Americans out in the Midwest when they wanted to get into the gold mines in some of the plain regions. What did they do? They fought with some of the Native Americans. They started what they called the Indian Wars back in the mid-1800s. This is all after the Civil War. This is all after slavery was abolished, but now they're picking a new group to persecute. The government killed as many Native Americans as possible, and then on top of that, once the 1900s started, what does Hollywood do? It makes fun of them. I mean, we've seen some of the Jim Crow videos and things that put white people in blackface to pretty much portray black people as idiots, but at the same time, what did you see in all the Western movies? You saw Native Americans treated as savages. You saw them treated as the bad guys. Cowboys and Indians and all these fucking stupid ass shit that made it seem like Native Americans were the antagonizers. They were the aggressors. No, they lost their land to European settlers. They were pushed out west, sent to reservations, and then every time this country's founding is discussed, they're completely ignored. We talk about George Washington, the Revolutionary War, but what's completely ignored is that Native Americans were basically pushed out of their land. And yes, African Americans were taken hostage, they were brought over here, and they were thrown into slavery. After that occurred, Native Americans were still persecuted. Still, African Americans don't have it easy. But imagine being a Native American and being stuck on reservations and the government basically giving you out a little bit of government assistance because simply that's what we're going to do to make it look like we're helping you. It is awful what has been done to them. And essentially the only ones that are quote-unquote successful are people that have like 1/100th of Native American in their blood and they build a casino on fucking land. They have been screwed over since day one by this country. And by far and away, the most screwed over nationality that we have. As far as the code talkers, for anyone that want us to know what the code talkers are, back in some of our earliest wars, we're talking World War II is when they were made famous, but they were actually in wars before that, in World War I and even going on. The government used Native Americans to pass messages along to their infantry. In any war, you have to understand that the generals need to communicate with their units. They need to talk about positioning, they need to talk about strategy, the attack plans, and the only way that you're going to get a messenger across that is able to communicate with another group is to pretty much code the communication so the other side will not get to it. When it came to World War II, the United States used a lot of Native Americans to basically communicate codes to all of the infantry and the army out in the regions when they were fighting World War II. In particular, some of the ones that are most known are the Navajo Native Americans. Essentially, my understanding is that their language or their grammar is very difficult to pick up on. So outside of living in the United States and knowing the Navajo language, the forces that the United States were fighting against in all their wars, they had no clue what they were talking about. So it made an excellent way to pass communication communications, coded communications, in order for U.S. troops to mobilize and have a secure lines of being able to talk from one side to the other. So the Native Americans who helped out as code talkers, who passed along that information, absolutely, they were very valuable in the ability to fight our wars. They were very valuable in protecting the United States when it came to some of the wars that we had to fight pretty much overseas. So if you want to talk about people that were revered in history, we look back, now code talkers are looked at as some of the most important aspects of our war. To give you an idea, one of the generals stated that the Battle of Iwo Jima would have never been won without Native American code talkers. That gives you an idea of how important they were and how important they are to American history. Next up, from KHBJJ, and you can see he writes a whole long novel here, basically, again, thanking me for everything that I've done. And guys, like I've said, I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys have watched my content. You've appreciated what I've been able to put on YouTube all these years and that you've been entertained by it. But he sneaks a question all the way into the middle of this joint. Since you won't do a face reveal, which I generally would pay for after watching you for all these years, I like to put a face to a voice. What celebrity would you say you look most similar to? Now, here's the thing. I went to those websites where you post a picture in and you say, what celebrity do I look like? The highest percentage that I got was 31% for a particular celebrity. And here's the thing. I used a couple pictures and I went to a couple sites, and at no point did any picture say, oh yeah, you're like 30% more than this person. And the highest that I got, and this one I don't even agree with, was some soccer player, Arturo Vidal. I have no fucking idea who he is, but that was the highest percentage that I got any picture. I got another athlete that I personally think, out of all the ones, I was like, yeah, okay, I could probably say that's the closest one. He was a pitcher in baseball named J.C. Romero. He's the only other one that popped up for athletes. But I got all kinds of weird shit. I got Michael Pena. He was the funny guy in the Ant-Man movies. He's always a comic relief in almost every movies. Noel Guglielmi. He's the guy that always plays the Mexican gangster in every fucking movie. Every character, he's ever played, I think his name is Hector. When you guys look him up, you'll be like, yeah, I know that motherfucker. He's in every movie as a fucking Mexican gangster, but at the same time, or gangbanger, but I don't think I look like him. I got Bobby Cannavale, which was also kind of odd. I got Luis Fonsi. I was like, huh? What? So I got a whole bunch of weird ones if you go by the websites, and none of them were more than a 30% match. Next up is another motherfucker who decided to ask a whole bunch of questions. I mean, this is just like a soup of fucking questions. So I'm going to post this shit up on the screen. That way you guys can look at it. It's from Johan Lazer. He asked a whole bunch, and I'm going to go through one by one, tackling each one because there's a lot of shit to digest here. So, first one, what are your thoughts on big publisher and developers like EA, Activision, Take-Two, and Ubisoft achieving their big dream of live services? It's a fad. I mean, part of it is they're just going to do whatever's selling games right now. When people see that a game like Destiny, Fortnite, these persistently online games, whether it's Overwatch or League of Legends, anything that's persistently online, persistently always connected seems to be the fad. So naturally, the developers and the studios are going to try to mimic that success, and they're going to try to push the limits as to what they can do with live services. Now, again, I think it's a fad. Come down the road, I'm sure there's going to be something else that comes along and replaces it, but for right now, they're obviously taking advantage of it. He then says, I asked myself if they have a vision for it and the business management in place to realize the vision, and sort of doubt that they do. What do you think? No, pretty much the same thing. I think they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants, and you can kind of tell that by some of the games. They're allowing the studios to pretty much dictate what they believe live services is, and they kind of sit back and they just say, does it work or is it making money? Because the perfect examples are Anthem, The Division, and Destiny. Anthem made no money. EA's pretty much almost cut their losses on that one. The Division kind of hangs around, and they always kind of have a resurrection every now and then, so it seems like they're waiting for that one as well. And Destiny, for some reason, continues to persist. I don't know how they do it, but somehow they always manage to pull through. Looking at how the stocks of Activision drop after the guys don't you have phones incident, and the similar drop in EA stock over the same period. I'd like to hear your take on the industry, understanding its customer base and what the future will look like with live services. I mean, look, again, they base their decisions on money. They don't base their decisions on what gamers want. They base on what they think gamers are buying. If they wanted to ask what gamers want, every gamer's going to say, I want free, I want more, I don't want to have to pay for any extra than I've already done. So because of that, EA, Activision, Take-Two are like, yeah, we kind of got to make money in this motherfucker, so we're basically going to kind of nickel and dime you until we get as much money out of you as possible. Next question I sort of answered into that one, but then the next one is, will Microsoft and Sony outmaneuver the likes of EA, Activision, Take-Two, and win the race with better business models and more importantly with better games? Here's the thing, Microsoft and Sony are partners with all these major publishers. They're not going to step on their toes. Essentially what they need to do is they all need to coexist in the same environment. And because Microsoft and Sony have the consoles, they clearly need partners to make games for their consoles because both of them can't only put out 3 to 4 games a year from their own internal studios and hope people are going to buy a console for that. So as far as trying to outmaneuver their business partners, probably not. Now, will they copy some ideas from them? Sure. Will they try to compete with them in small areas where they're trying to say, oh yeah, here's our game, it sort of works like these, but we're not really going to deny some of the games like EA and Activision kind of thing? Yeah, that's what they're going to do. They need these companies to make money. So no, they're not going to outmaneuver them simply because you're not going to bite the hand that feeds you. Will some go out of business? When it comes to studios, yeah, BioWare is probably the top of the list right now. But basically, if a studio doesn't make money and a game doesn't sell well, yeah, it's probably going to go to the scrap heap and not make as much. Are customers bitching too much about live service models they can't stop? Yeah, pretty much. I mean, unless we change the culture of what we pay for, yeah, these studios and the developers are going to continue to push out a lot of live services so that we can keep paying for these. Will EA ever stop being a dick? No, because that's in their nature. Have Bethesda ever been anything other than a dick? No, because again, that's their nature. Does esports have a say in all this? Now, I would have done a longer skit on esports, but I wanted to keep this a little bit simple. No, esports does not have anything to do with this. Part of that is because they basically look to gouge for money. That's it. If you think Microsoft is bad, if you think these studios like EA and Activision are bad with their price gouging, what esports does to their teams and how they get the money from fans, from the events, it's disgusting. Not going to talk about it here, but essentially all they care about is that a game is popular with fans and they could turn it into some type of esport competition. Stadia versus Microsoft and Sony, yeah, it's not really a competition. Stadia is not going to be able to hold up to those two. Essentially, unless you had a console, people still like the hard console. They're not going to go for Stadia as much as Google might think that people will. Epic Games versus everybody. Let's be honest here, they really have one fucking game. The game makes a lot of money. But eventually it's going to wear out, similar to how World of Warcraft eventually burned out with all of its fans. I mean, it has its spikes and peaks every now and then, but certainly not what it used to be 10 years ago. And finally, what are your thoughts and final opinions on your outlook for the industry as a whole? Look, video games are always going to take advantage of what's popular. Essentially, right now, what's popular are live services, are remasters of some of the old games that were fantastic back in the day. But as far as doing new content, new IPs, it's difficult. Because if a game bombs and you went into production on this, on something brand new, never seen before, never done before, completely original, and it doesn't work, that you can't make a sequel off of it, yeah, you're kind of fucked. So a lot of why studios are making all these remasters is because you know these games stood the test of time and players liked them when they came out. So if you roll it out now as a remaster with new HD settings and all that other shit, yeah, people are going to buy it simply for the nostalgia. Next question from TheMcFather. What is the one thing throughout the years of doing YouTube and talking about gaming, life, and general advice that you'd want your followers to know as a life lesson? Then he asked, ¿Por qué no hiciste un comentario completo en español? You've mentioned that you wanted to do a complete commentary in Spanish if you wanted to. Then he asked, once you left this earth, what is the one thing you wish to be remembered for? So, 3 questions. Perseverance. That's all you gotta know. All you need to know is that if you want to achieve something, if you know you can achieve something, you just have to work towards it. That's all. I never wanted to have a big channel. I never cared about having a big channel. But what did I do? I put out videos. That's all I did. I didn't do anything special. I just persevered with my channel. If you want to have a healthy career, if you want to have a family, all it takes is perseverance. All it takes is effort. All it takes is not giving up in life. And whatever you think you can achieve, you can. You just have to work towards it. It just takes a little bit of effort. It takes a certain amount of work to get there. And it takes a certain attitude towards, I'm not going to give up until I get this. Now, as far as why would I not do a commentary in all Spanish? Well, one, it might get fucking flagged. But the reality is, I would do one, and then what? 90% of my viewers will not know what the fuck I'm talking about? They're going to be like, what the fuck is he talking about? So that's why I was like, man, I could, not going to. And then finally, once you have left this earth, what is the one thing you wish to be remembered for? That my humor. That's it. that I was the type that made people laugh. I put a smile on people's face. I entertain them, and that's not just from YouTube. That's just in my life in general. A lot of people know that I'm more of a entertaining kind of guy. I'm more of a clown. When people notice me, the dry sense of humor, the awkward humor, things like that are what I'm known for, and if that's what people remember me for, I'll be perfectly fine with that. Next question from Tylericious. With kids now here, are you planning on getting a PlayStation 5 or whatever it's called? If so, what games do you want to see on it the most? Absolutely. I'm still going to play. I'm always going to be a gamer at heart. That has always going to be my hobby. It's just YouTube has kind of been the one that's going to have to go by the wayside. But yeah, I'm going to get my PlayStation 5. Obviously some games that I want to see in the future. I don't know when The Last of Us 2 is going to come out, so I would definitely get that. Destiny 3 will obviously come out. Hopefully Modern Warfare continues with Call of Duty, and if it's a good game, I'll probably get that in the future. And then whatever games that come out that looks good. I really wish the NCAA football series would come back. That's one game that I wish I would see. Fucking Marvel Alliance went to Nintendo Switch, which pissed me off, because if that was on PlayStation, I certainly would have bought that. So hopefully in the future, whatever games come out, hopefully they look pretty decent. Next, from Flying Reaper. Any religious beliefs? Yeah, I don't have them. Religion's a scam. That's what I believe in. Fuck that shit, man. I think I've gone over this before, but I was supposed to be raised as Roman Catholic, and the more I went to Sunday school and listened to some of the shit that they were spewing in church, I'm like, this is all bullshit, man. I questioned it as a kid, and then when I got older, I was like, this is just indoctrination. This is all a bunch of bullshit, man. I don't believe in religion at all. I don't fault people who do. I don't criticize those who do. But my personal belief is religion has always been a gigantic pile of bullshit indoctrination. Next question from Bless the Bads. The Badass? Bad is one? I don't know. I don't know how he pronounces that shit. But anyway, his question is, what do you think of this new generation of depression rap and its effect on the younger generations? Again, fads. When someone has a big hit by doing something, what ends up happening, others try to mimic or copy that. That's usually what occurs. I mean, you could go back to the start of rap all the way back in the 70s, and you can see that when something stuck, then everyone would start doing it. So when rap started talking about how bad the other MCs are, then everybody picked up on that. And then when rap turned into how much money you have, everybody picked up on that. And then when rap turned into trap music, then it turned into that. Then the mumble generation, look, it goes in phases. This will eventually phase out, and then something else will come in, and then the next group of rappers will talk about whatever the fuck is the next part of the phase. So overall, it's just a phase. I don't listen to the current generation of rap. I think it's all garbage. I still prefer late 90s rap over anything. Next question from Shotgun Chicken. Really? That's your name on YouTube? Okay. What is your advice do you have for people who plan on starting YouTube as a hobby? If you're going to be a hobby, you got to keep it as a hobby. If you think that you're going to get into YouTube and you're going to make money off of this and you're going to get rich, I'm going to tell you right now, don't even bother. The way YouTube has worked, and obviously it's been around for, almost 12 years now, the people who got in early have obviously capitalized on it. The people who are getting into it now, you have to have a niche that makes you unique, and you have to have a lot of time to invest into it. If it's just a hobby, just make sure that you're always set on saying, this is just my hobby, because it's going to be frustrating. It's going to feel very demoralizing that nobody wants to watch your videos, that your channel doesn't grow, because if it is a hobby, you want to make sure that you're not feeling like your channel doesn't progress, because it doesn't in today's day and age. YouTube has completely changed from the way it was when I first started, so I can only imagine those who are trying to get into it now are only going to be frustrated as soon as they see their channel is not growing. Next question from Megamaster592. I remember when I asked you about the current generation of teens and kids and you went on a full rant a few years back. Yes, and I remember that fucking rant. So does that rant still apply, or has anything changed? Nope, rant still applies. It's just a new generation of kids who don't understand how life works. And then he asked me, what exactly was your job that earned so much money? I think I just told you about that before in the prior videos. But essentially, years ago, I remember that rant. And I remember the footage was over an Uncharted game. So it gives you an idea. Uncharted 3 came out at the time. So whenever Uncharted 3 was out, if you guys want to go search it, I went on a long fucking tear about the current generation of kids. And the reality is, it still holds up. You can't blame children for these days. You can't blame the teenagers and to a certain extent millennials, because it's really the parents' fault. The parents never instilled values of worth to them, of discipline, of responsibility. So when you don't have these kind of things, when you don't have responsibility built in, when you don't have respect built into how you're supposed to grow up, you naturally grow up into an asshole. And like, that doesn't apply to every single person. I don't want everyone being lumped into that. But essentially, the current generation of kids still have problems with these things. They still grow up thinking that they know the world better than adults, because that was never instilled upon them, that parents know a little bit more than their children. But when parents don't actually teach their kids things, you end up with this current generation. Next two questions from Triangle. If you could redo YouTube, what would you do different, and how did you meet Straight Up Knives? I don't know if you mean would I redo anything on my channel, or would I redesign YouTube in general? I mean, right now YouTube is obviously a business. Ever since Google bought it out, that's what pretty much started the decline in the business. They mainly wanted to promote any videos or any channel that made more money and who was going to make this into a living. People like me who did this as a hobby, it didn't fucking matter to me. I didn't give a shit whether or not YouTube or Google was promoting my shit, but obviously I didn't make money off of that. I didn't need the money. But at the same time, I didn't get extra views. I didn't get people to see my content simply because I wasn't promoting it and I wasn't taking advantage of the algorithms and exploiting the shit. So if I could redo my channel, no, I would never do anything different. If I could redo YouTube, I would make it so that the algorithms aren't exploitable, where people basically use those so that everyone can see their videos and not other people's videos. Second, how did you meet Straight Up Knives? I think I mentioned a little bit about this in a prior question. Back when, around the time that people were doing all these top 5, top 10 type videos, a lot of channels were asking me, can I come over and do a guest commentary? And many of you guys have seen my stuff. If you see me on Straight Up Knives, you know that there's a certain brand of humor that I would bring to those top 5 commentaries. And I guess he saw one of mine in another channel. He said, hey, would you want to do a top 5 commentary on my channel? I was like, sure. There isn't a single channel that I went out there and said no to. If they were a big channel, small channel, did not matter. Anytime somebody asked me, would you like to do the commentary on this top 5? I was like, sure, absolutely. So I'm assuming he saw my video, or he saw someone else's video with me doing the commentary somewhere else. He asked me. I said, sure. I entertained his viewers, and he kept asking me to come back, and I appreciated the chance to be able to entertain his viewers. Next question from The Dark Death. Hey, man, you want to party up on Destiny Comp? Well, depends on how good you are. If you know how to play, sure. If you expect me to carry you, probably not going to happen. It also depends on how high your glory is right now. My glory is around 2200. I've already gotten the Recluse and all that other shit. So if you're like just starting Destiny Comp, you'd not want to play with me, because all you're going to be doing is playing against good competition. Next question from Divirse. I can't tell, but anyway, you guys see it on the screen. Can you make a video on how to be a dad? No. You know why? Because I'm watching videos on YouTube on how to be a dad. I don't fucking know anything, man. I could just tell you what I've been able to do for these past couple of 2 months, and it's just barely surviving. How to be a dad? Fuck do I know about that shit, man. I'm learning as I go. This is not something I'm an expert on, and something I will never make a video on, because I am not an expert. I'm literally flying by the seat of my pants and going by the knowledge that others have bestowed upon me, and hoping that my kids come out pretty decent. Next is Juan Ibarra, and he actually asked a number of questions that I answered. However, he did ask one at the end that I will go into a little bit of detail. Again, congrats, kind of see me going, but again, I'm on to bigger and better things. Damn right I am. Oh man, they're not big right now. They're little, small, tiny motherfuckers, but eventually they're going to get a little bit bigger. But anyway, his question was, how was your childhood? I already explained that part. For example, how did your parents treat you, and how would you compare that to how you're going to treat your children? So that part is what I will discuss. Generations are different. And part of that is generations learn what went right and what went wrong. I know what I liked when I was growing up and how my parents, or how my mom raised me, along with my grandparents and stuff like that. And the thing is, what worked all those years ago doesn't work now. What used to be acceptable, what used to be the norm in those days when it came to discipline, when it came to structure, is not how it works today. So part of what's happened as people get older is you realize that the parenting techniques that were used upon you as a child, unless you're like, you know, just 20-year-olds yourself, chances are it's not going to work with the current generation. So you kind of have to adapt. You kind of have to learn from just the principles of what worked back in the day. But as far as the technique and exactly how you plan on raising your children, that has completely changed in the time that I was a child to now. Look at this motherfucker. He decided, because it's the last question and answer session, he decided he was going to ask everything. So I'm going to put this up on the screen because he asked a number of these fucking questions. MrFinalPrestige decided he was just going to ask them. So I'm going to go through one by one and answer them as quickly as possible. First, how old are you? I'm between 35 and 40. Not 40 yet. But I will say I'm getting closer to that age. However, I'm not going to tell you my direct age because, again, security and all that stuff. What do I do for a living? I already discussed that in the first video. It was the final question that I had. What school did you go to and what degrees did you get? I graduated from Syracuse University and I actually walked out of there with 2 degrees. Matter of fact, I walked out of there with a degree in communication. Anybody that knows Syracuse knows the Newhouse School of Communication is one of the hardest schools in the country to get into. Pretty much almost, I'd say half the people you see on TV, from broadcasters to reporters to sports anchors, they probably went to Syracuse's Newhouse School of Communication. I graduated from there and I didn't end up on TV. However, I also have a major. Back in the day, they called it IST. I mean, I'm showing you how old I am. It's essentially IT, but it's not programming. They did have programming, computer engineering back in those days, but IST was basically knowing how to use a computer. That was the bottom line. Back then when Windows and Word were first coming out, people didn't know what they were doing, so they created majors revolved around that. Now, everybody knows how to fucking use Word, Excel. There's no reason to have it as a major, but those were the 2 degrees that I graduated with. What is your first name, or what is the video where we can see it? Here's someone who's obviously watched my videos, because I've said this plenty of times. My name has actually shown up in a video, and if you guys are interested in finding out what my name is, for some reason, I don't know why, Gran Turismo decided that they were going to use somebody's real name on the display screen as opposed to their PSN name like JLoco11. I have no clue why they did that, but for whatever reason, when I posted up some Gran Turismo videos, I believe there's only 1 or 2 videos on there, it does show my real name. So for those interested who want to see my real name, not going to tell you here, but if you wanted to go to the Gran Turismo videos, you could probably see it during those. What nationality are you? I know this is another question that a lot of people have asked. So, grand total, I don't know my DNA, first of all. If I did a DNA test, I'm sure I'm going to show a whole bunch more shit. But if you were to just go by my 4 grandparents, I have 3 grandparents that are Puerto Rican, and I have 1 grandparent that is split Irish and Scottish. So if you were to do the math, I'm 75% Puerto Rican and I'm a quarter Irish Scottish. So yes, I am genetically built for clubbing. I have rhythm, I know music, and I have a tolerance for alcohol. Now that you moved and bought a house, where did you grow up in New York City? Astoria, Queens. One of the Greekest fucking neighborhoods on the planet. And since you always like more complex question, how would you fix our political system? Not the issues like abortion, guns, immigration, but how would you fix the co-branches of government if you had the chance? So we're not talking about gun control, we're not talking about abortion. What we're talking about is why the government is dysfunctional. And there are a few things that I would do. Number 1, you have to do campaign financing over. And the fact that you can pretty much buy a politician shows what's wrong with our system. Right now, the NRA can buy a politician. Education unions can buy a politician. And essentially what you do is once you buy your politician, you know they're always going to vote for you on the issues. That's why you never see reforms, because one side will absolutely refuse to work with the other because they've basically been paid off. So the very first thing that I would do, you have to work on campaign financing. You cannot let outside companies buy politicians anymore. Another thing I would do is I would fix the fact that one person can stop bills from ever making it to the president's office. Right now, the leader of the Senate, the head of the Senate, has the ability to pretty much stall any kind of legislation, which Mr. McConnell does all the goddamn time. No more. Have to fix that. If the House passes something, it has to at least make it to the floor of the Senate in order to be voted on, because it's fucking ridiculous at this point that virtually any bill he doesn't like, he's able to stop. One person in the government should not have that ability to do so. We also have 435 people in the House of Representatives. I know the point of the House of Representatives, but let's be honest right now. They come into office, they're only there for 2 years. The first year, they do whatever they possibly can. They go out, they talk to their constituents through town hall meetings. And then year number 2, what are they doing? They're campaigning in order to keep their job. I just can't imagine 435 people in one sitting branch of government are effective, knowing that essentially you're just going to work for 1 year. So the first thing that I would do is I have to fix the House of Representatives. The final thing would be super PACs. Right now, super PACs have the ability to go out, post gobs of money to make ads to pretty much target the candidate that they don't like. I would get rid of super PACs. I would make laws to prevent super PACs. I know they say, oh yeah, but that's infringing upon First Amendment rights. Yeah, I get it, but we would still make laws to get around that shit, because right now, the fact that you could just go out, put any ad on TV, whether it's accurate or inaccurate, and basically lie against another politician, oh yeah, no, I get rid of that shit in a fucking minute. Alright, we're gonna wrap it up here for video number 3. The next video is the very final questions that I'm ever going to answer. I'll probably have it towards the end of the week, so if you haven't seen your questions by now, they're going to be in the final video. So as always, rate, comment, subscribe, and all that good shit, and I'll see you guys in the last video.